all feeling?
Not sick, which is, I suppose, a bonus in these days.
Yes. Try not to look at the news to make me more sick.
Yes, exactly.
Oh my goodness, I was listening to the World Service today, and it's like nobody knows anything, as far as I can tell.
What is going on in England? They haven't closed the schools. My brother-in-law.
No, they're closing Friday. They're closing Friday.
They are? But I got a text this morning that said to your interest, that your topic you wanted to bring up, all the football programs are shut.
Yep.
Football.
Yep. Soccer's over. I don't think we'll see. Well, has Major League Baseball officially cancelled the season yet?
No, they're waiting. It'll happen.
Yeah. The thing that bothered me this morning really was I was wondering what the hell was going on in Wuhan. And they're still on lockdown. And it's been 2.5 months.
Yeah.
But they reported no new cases yesterday, which is
I saw that. That was amazing.
I wasn't sure if I believed it, but I saw it.
Well, then you shouldn't be watching the still unfolding presidential news conference today because
I can't watch him. He's
already.
We lost your video, Tim. Lost your video.
Well, I'm still here verbally. I lost all of your video too. So
okay.
I'm still here.
You did? Okay. Well, all of these, speaking of these kinds of services, I'm researching these platforms, and everybody is, because this is going to be potentially a way for everyone to connect. And I thought it would be a great opportunity for us to get out there, to foster communication, to keep the community together, to talk about what's happening in TV, because it's all going to be about TV now,
Yep.
And that kind of puts us in the hot seat. And so, how do we reinvent what we're doing and understanding the business, providing analysis and insight for the industry at large, because they're all, still getting used to their home office and so on and so forth. And I'm assuming that we will see the industry ramp up week by week until, new services are coming out. I am absolutely seeing new platforms come out like this, new conference platforms that are going to utilize video. I'm seeing new webinars being produced every day. So
yes,
I guess my first question is, other than, how are you feeling, which we just sort of discussed, tell me a little bit about how you're adapting to your home office, because you're as analysts, as consultants, you're constantly having to meet with people, right? But you also are used to talking with people this way. Tell me a little bit, maybe go in a circle like Brady Bunch. Whoever wants to talk, we can go to Colin.
So I'll kick it off first. So Tracy, it's really not made a heck of a much of a difference to me. I mean, I think we all probably work from home. I already have a set of platforms that I use to conduct my business, and I continue to use those platforms to do podcasts and interviews and discussions. So it's really not affected me greatly. I tell you what has, though, and that's the absence of the conferences. And they're one way that, as an analyst, I really get to take the temperature of the industry in a way that I can't any other way, because you really, you get a sense of the mood of everybody that's attending. You hear the questions that are being asked. You really hear the concerns. And so, for me, the missing connected TV this week in London and NAB next month. That's a big hole, because it really helps me level set what's going on in our business.
And so many conferences have canceled, right? South by Southwest, Hanlon, I think, just canceled yesterday, right?
Yeah.
TVOT has not officially canceled yet,
and we've all got our fingers crossed.
We're trying to work these things out. And what else is canceled? I don't know.
Yeah,
I'm hearing.
I'm sorry. My video's coming in and out, but I'll at least speak to it, and you'll see my lovely mug pop up somehow. It's we're network issues.
Okay.
But so I actually do a lot of work in planning a bunch of conference types things for broadcasting cable multi-channel news, and those things have been, shall we say, fluid as well. But I think, it's also, to Colin's point, very helpful, and this is sort of a unique industry, I guess, where personal relationships matter, right? Advertising related, media related, it tends to be over-indexed on that. I think it's going to be very interesting to see how much of that still endures, both short-term and long-term. And I think it's also a bit of a reassessment. I mean, when in moments like this, you can kind of look at things in a grander scale, from mortality onward, right, or better. And you can start to maybe ask the question, is there a superfluousness to some of these kinds of events and that kind of stuff, right? There's arguably a whole sort of a cottage industry in sort of having these kinds of things. That said, there is value, right? But I think it's going to be a real test to sort of see how much of that sort of direct connection, industry temperature stuff can be replaced by, shall we say, virtual connections and relationships. But fundamentally, the reality is we're still in the industries that we are, and I don't think. Or you can make the argument that television and video and communication is more important than ever, and will be going forward.
Yeah.
Alan.
Same. As Colin noted, I mean, I work out of the house most of the time. I did lose my office when Washington University in St. Louis shut down for the rest of the year, and my son came home. So back to the temporary office. And what we've been hearing from clients, is that everybody's assuming that nothing is happening until the fall. In other words, that everything will wind up being, chances are pretty high that everything's going to wind up being canceled up until the summer or September. And or the vast majority of things. I mean, if TVOT happens, then that's one show, but the big ones, NAB, Con, a lot of the shows that are in April and May are out, and they're like, okay, what's our next plan? What's our plan B? Because we are not the only ones who use these conferences to actually sort of take a temperature of the industry. A lot of business gets done at them, and people are like, okay, how do I actually, how do I get my message out there? What's my plan B? And I think a lot of people are going to start turning to virtual platforms. It will be very interesting to see what happens with Zoom, as my son had pointed out the other day, once colleges start up again next week, because every college seems to be using Zoom to do their online classes. So I wonder if that's going to crash their servers. And people are just, people are trying to figure out, okay, what do we do now? How do we even get our own staff to coordinate? Because nobody's in the office anymore. And how do we make decisions? But at the same time, I think they're realizing, like, it matters now. Like, none of this is stopping. It's all going on. None of the TV industry is not stopping. Advertising is not stopping. And we need to figure out what's our next step.
Yeah, that's a situation for the entire industry, isn't it, Alan? I mean, everything is realigning, and I was thinking about our discussion this morning and thinking about how all of this affects our industry, and it seems to touch pretty much every part, some in very positive ways and some in not positive ways at all. So
what do you mean? I think, can you be specific, Colin? What do you mean by positive, not positive?
Well, for example, I think that we're going to see a huge increase in the use of fast services. Thank you, Alan, for that term. I love it.
Thank you.
That's things like Pluto TV and Zumo. We're just going to see a step up in the usage of those services. And also, of course, we'll see a lot more. Tubi,
right?
Yeah, that's right. Fox just bought Tubi, so that was I think a smart buy. It's a great time to get into this business. And we're also going to see a step function, I think, in the use of SVOD. But the problem when you think about it for SVOD is they're okay for now because they've got a flow of content. that was in the pipeline that's coming into their service. So there's not lots of nice, fresh content. But they've halted production on stuff that's in the pipeline now. And that means
I heard Netflix halted content creation production.
That's right. And they have. And they're a great case, right? Because they're pouring content, new content. 35, I think Ted Sarandos said 35 new shows every week is coming into Netflix. So they're going to run out in a month or two. And so they've really got to manage that, and I think they've got to back off and maybe slow the rate at which content is coming in. So, and that's just one tiny example of how there's good news and bad news here for everybody.
Right, but I think the flip of that though is that there's been such a glut of content, right? There's so many billions of dollars being spent. So in a funny way, it gives people a chance to catch up. I know personally, like, my thought is like, oh, there's all these shows that I sort of wanted to watch or catch up on the next season of that just kind of went by. I didn't have time, and it's like, okay, now I have like this break and I can actually watch all this stuff. We had put something out too, suggesting that the smartest thing for the industry and for the SVOD services, but also for the MVPDs and vMVPDs, is to just give a month free. Say, okay, from whatever it is, April, the month of April, everything is free. Cable TV is free. All the SVOD services are free. I think that everybody's stuck at home.
I think Sling just announced they're going to be giving away free content for a month.
Yeah, they said I think CBS. I think CBS. One of the CBS properties is available for free through Sling for some time, and they already were making some content available for free.
Right. So, but if everybody did it at once, it'd be a great. First off, like it would be a great thing for people at home. It would make the industry look really, really smart. And really caring, which is something, especially for the MVPD side, that doesn't often sort of come across. And then also with all the SVOD, it would give people a chance to try them. Like it would just be 1 month. They'd get to see what the value is. And I suspect they would wind up getting more subscribers that way, just because people would be able to see what was on them. And a lot of people who might be afraid to sign up or whatever would say, okay, yeah, I'll just go for it. And it would get a ton of press too. I mean, the whole industry bands together.
Yeah, it's the ultimate promotional window, right? So, you have to think about that also in context with the various niche streamers out there, of which there are, at least in the United States, at least a couple of hundred, right? That, this is, if you will, almost prime time for exposure and sampling. I mean, you see the NBA doing that. You see the NFL doing that now with their packages of all I think the NFL said today that they're offering on their service every game that's ever been played since 2009. I mean, that's like for free, right? Which would normally be a $90 or whatever, yearly subscription plan. And that's the ultimate, I hate to say it, but it's a great promotional window. But also for the 2 to 3 biggies that still have yet to launch, right? HBO Max, Peacock from NBC, which is heavily, depending on the Olympics, to be a promotional platform. The irony is that they may wind up either having to postpone the Olympics and gamble on content. And do we need more of it in this day and age, or is it almost perfect for them to launch in this kind of environment, albeit to you guys' point, maybe with a free trial kind of thing? Don't know. It's peak television as it is now, right? But
well, with sports, Tim, it's desperate times for these guys. I can't think of an industry. Well, aside from theater, the movies, I can't think of an industry that is so impacted by this situation than live sports, and everybody that is dependent on them. And I mean, I was reading some data yesterday. Let's see that you mentioned NBC and the Olympics. Look, the Olympics is going to end up getting cancelled. It's almost certain. There was a report that NBC was looking for $1.25 billion in ad commits for the Olympics, for that Olympic period, for that month starting July 24th. that is a massive impact in revenue for NBC. I think I saw data also where I think Moffett-Nathanson was saying that they thought ESPN would lose 461 million, that Turner would lose 210 million. And this is all for the absence of live sports. I mean, this is desperate times, right?
Yeah. And then there's a bigger question with sports too, which is, it right now, it seemed just before all this went down, there was this sort of bubble, right, where, or on the bubble, I should say, where people are thinking, okay, the RSNs and things like that, are they really worth the values? Sinclair just paid almost $10 billion for Fox's RSNs.
Yeah, that was the question before the crisis, right?
Right, and I was just going to say someone, but it was actually you, Colin, had sort of come out with a stat. I remember it was like that it adds $26 a month to your cable bill to have an RSN on it. And the question is, do people care enough? Because RSNs are people who are hardcore fans. I mean, if you're a 49ers fan, 49ers, football's not a good game, but if you're a San Francisco Giants fan, you want to watch every Giants game. And if there's a Red Sox Yankees game, you probably on ESPN, that may not be of any concern to you unless it somehow affects the San Francisco Giants. So the question is, there's almost 200 games every year, and do people have the time to watch 200 baseball games or the desire? I mean, back in the day, you could either listen to it on the radio or watch it on TV, but those were your two options if you wanted to get the scores in real time. There's so many other ways now to get the score in real time that you question, do people really need to subscribe to these RSNs to keep it up? The flip of that, though, is that these teams routinely sell tickets for $100 a pop and up. And so that's for a single game. And while the in-stadium experience is different, fans might say, okay, hey, for a quarter of the price, I can watch every game, in Ultra HD on my 77-inch TV screen. So maybe it is worth it, even if I don't take them up on it all the time. But where sports fit into the ultimate bundle and how it works and and how valuable they are was a big question before all this went down, and I think it's going to be amplified by everything that's going on now.
So I think we should, I maybe want to use that as a segue, because we could get into sports generally and macroeconomics and all those things, which are important. But this is also a time, I think, to revisit the idea of cable subscription, MVPD subscriptions in times of economic, at least, right, which has a bigger dimension to it, of course. Down times, right? And there's always sort of this sort of tension between sort of two arguments, right? One is, as people have less disposable income, what do? One of the things, of course, they want to do is obviously decrease what those expenditures might be in substitute for things that are absolutely essential. And in a world where we've got lots of subscription services, inclusive of the legacy MVPD bundles, for those that still have them, that becomes a line item of convenience and or questioning in a long line of things that people have to think about when they, think about how to pay the bills and keep afloat. The other argument, though, and this has been the big argument historically by, say, the cable industry in particular, or the MVPD crowd generally, is one of the last things that people seem to cut is that cable/television subscription service, because it is the ultimate sort of cornucopia of entertainment that, in the absence of going out, dining, whatever, it's sort of the biggest kaleidoscope of stuff one can get for a relatively inexpensive fare. I think the difference this time, right, say even relative to the last downturn 10 plus years ago and even beyond that, is just the sheer monstrosity of streaming service choices. And frankly, a bunch of the trend already of people cutting cords, shaving, and even sort of completely eschewing a bundle altogether in the first place if they're of a younger ilk. So now maybe it becomes not only to MVPD or not to MVPD going forward, but a culling, if you will, of the essential services of streamers. And the key is, I think AVODs, interestingly, do a very good job of sticking around, because everybody's going to have all those free AVODs or fast services on their screen as an option. And the real question is, what other than even Netflix do I decide to keep when I'm trying to truly cull down from all of those choices? That to me seems to be interesting in the next number of months.
I wonder to what extent that television is an essential service, right? Which is a phrase being discussed in San Francisco all the time, because people are deciding what is an essential service. The pot industry has decided it's an essential business, right? In fact, I'm digressing slightly, but they closed the dispensaries down, and there was a huge uproar, and because it's an essential service, so they've been brought back up. And anyway, I'm kind of curious. If will people view television and more content as an essential service, because we're all stuck here. We don't know if we're going to be stuck here for months at a time. Will people want more content? But if new content isn't coming in, what will people do? And I'm kind of curious how content will innovate. Do you think all of these companies will look to make their content more attractive? Will they, because if they can't generate new content, maybe they've got to do something to the current content. So I'm just wondering if there's a way to make content interactive, communicable. I'm seeing the emergence of watch parties, right? Netflix there's a big article that sort of talked all about these watch parties. Watch parties all of a sudden, I think, are starting to gain some traction. So what do you think about innovation in the streaming space? Do you think we'll see texting while people are watching together, or gaming? What will the sports industry do with all that old content for the NHL? What do you guys think?
Yeah,
will they be able to monetize? Won't they be able to monetize some of that? What do you think? And then people pay for that. Okay.
I saw some data, Tracy, where in the UK they replaced one of the fixtures, one of the Premier League fixtures that had been cancelled. They replaced with an esports version of that using FIFA 2020, and they said it attracted a reasonable number of viewers. I got to tell you, I don't see the two as substitutes. So I don't see esports satisfying a traditional sports fan in the same way that their sport does. I just don't see it, because there's so much else going on with team sports and with their sport that I just don't see it as a substitute. So I don't think that will happen. I do think that there is an opportunity here. One of the things that I think a lot of sites have neglected is the value of programming. That, of course, was the ace in the hole of one of our favorite services, Tracy, which was Filmstruck, right? And I think that there's a great opportunity here for providers, Netflix, Hulu, etc., to step up and create interest in library content by cleverly programming it and surrounding it with personalities that, I mean, they can do this in the comfort of their own home, right? They can talk about movies, they can talk about shows.
Yeah.
So I think if I was Netflix, if I was in Hulu's shoes, I would seriously be looking at doing this now and creating those focused seasons, weeks. We're going to have John Wayne week. Oh goodness, not John Wayne, but some other
no
more reasonable personality.
Unless it's the Searchers, okay, or if it's the Cowboys, okay. Yeah. Just putting that in there for my two favorite John Wayne movies. Okay, go ahead.
What do you others? What Tim? Alan? What do you think?
Well, so yes, but I'm also now thinking too, and I know we probably would skate into this, but I'll open it up now. Is the reemergence, the rediscovery of free over-the-air television, right? So that was already kind of a thing prior to this gigantic disruption, right? And when people are looking economically at saving money, right, there is this, in many respects, almost still undiscovered cornucopia of stuff from the over-the-air folks, right? And I'm talking in particular of what I guess used to be known as diginets, right?
Yeah.
But we talk about libraries, right? That is essentially what the vast majority of these extra digital channels, courtesy of your local broadcasters, have been pumping out.
MeTV,
Right.
Buzzer.
But interestingly, like Heroes and Icons, H&I, Court TV is back. Movies with an exclamation point, which are literally a bunch of the same TCM movies, but with commercial interruption, but actually judiciously done. These are all and Dabble from CBS, and there's a whole bunch of these things that have television series and movies, and I got to tell you, just those alone and free over the air are a wellspring of content that's actually quite. I mean, if $6 Million Man marathons, I mean, they're already kind of there. You could see a lot of opportunity there. All I'm getting at is that. Well, hey, now, come on. Don't get me started on the original Wonder Woman with Linda Carter. But the idea, though, of library content is very powerful regardless of that source. And while there's a lot of streamer types that are out there, fast and otherwise, don't forget the over-the-air folks. And again, this could be one of those hastening moments that helps spur the quote-unquote rediscovery of the free over-the-air channel bundle that when you layer in all these 2, 3, 4, 5 different diginets per channel in a market, there's lots of stuff there. Now, there's a lot of home shopping and religious things that are just arguably not sort of very mainstream or attention grabbing, but it's a pretty impressive bundle of stuff that nobody has to pay for. And you wonder what the future looks like coming out of this as OTA becomes more of a thing. If I'm a broadcaster right now, counting on all those political dollars generally, and frankly fretting over what 2021 was going to look like anyway because of the non-political dollars and all that high tide rolling back out, structurally, broadcasters have some very big issues ahead of them in the near term. This is only going to maybe exacerbate that. And this could be broadcasters' opportunity to not only keep their news as vital and relevant as ever, but to kind of rethink and reinvent and reshape what the value proposition is for the longer term, where they've been kind of, frankly, holding back from OTA because they've been still trying to push on retrans fees. I think the time to reposition is now, and maybe to their advantage.
Do you think this will drive more, development and implementation of next-gen TV technology to make local TV more relevant? Because they were already moving towards doing all those broadcasts, from one location or as a conglomerate, to manage all their local TV stuff. I mean, this might erode local broadcasting as something that happens in a local studio. So, but will it make it from and downloadable and everything that Next Gen promises? Do you think we're going to see that push from that?
I'll weigh in and I'll let you guys sort of pounce on it. But you wonder what if Next Gen TV was 2 or 3 years ahead of where it is now, in the midst of what we're going through, what could be done, with data, with first responder information, with the tracking more, at least with the throughput, let alone the applications of tracking, where outbreaks are happening and allocation of resources and all that kind of stuff, So if anything that kind of maybe highlights at least the emergency sort of properties of what Next Gen TV is, this is obviously a very strong case study as to why. But then from an entertainment and content perspective, arguably maybe gives a bit of a hint of the possibilities of such using over the air. So now that said, does any of what we're going through now, short term or maybe medium term, interrupt some of those what are still largely investments and deployments and scaling? That remains to be seen. But in terms of the strategic importance and value of what Next Gen TV sort of portends, this is to me a great case study as to what and why.
So
I'll shut up for you guys.
Thank you. I'm going to rebut all of that. So the problem with Next Gen TV is the problem with over the air. Like, there's a reason almost 90% of people in the U.S. have cable. It's because over the air is pretty bad in most of the country. I mean, I live about 15 miles from Manhattan, in a place that's known for its short hills, and I can't get, with a very good Leaf indoor antenna, I get 2 different channels in each different room, but not all of them in every room, and I would need to get a roof antenna probably to bring it in, which is beyond my technical capabilities. And how would I get one right now anyway, unless Amazon brought it? So I think that's always going to be a problem, is that people, that over-the-air reception, because we're such a large country, over-the-air reception in a lot of places is not that great. I think that local broadcasting, however, still has a huge role. I think that a lot of them have signed up with VMVPDs. They've sort of gotten over that hump, and that they are, as you noted, the source of local news, which is huge, and that's what people want. And that also, as we've gotten more digital, we're able to do targeting much better, and local and geography is one of the huge things that advertisers are looking at. How do I get people in this certain geographic region? And that portends to both local broadcasters and the local services of cable and anybody else, CTV, the FAST, who can do any kind of local targeting. So I think local is still huge. It's going to be very, very important. And next gen, I think, has to solve that transmission problem and getting people over the age of probably at this point 50 over their fear of over the air. But I think it could be huge. I also think so. One of the things that brought up to me is that news is going to be a huge part of why people hold on to cable right now. I think because there's two of the flixes, if we call them, would be able to offer 24-hour news, but neither of them is operational. So, HBO Max technically has CNN as part of the AT&T portfolio, and Peacock would technically have MSNBC as part of the Comcast portfolio, but neither of them is up and running now. So if you get rid of cable, you then get, other than putting up an antenna, you get rid of any news. And I don't think people, especially now, are in any way, shape, or form ready to give up access to television news. And I think this is, if anything, has made people realize how important television news is, because even though you get a lot of stuff from the internet, when the president speaks and or when the governor speaks, you want to watch it on TV. You don't really want, you don't want to watch it on the laptop. And then the final thing, to circle all the way back to your thing, is one of the things that, in terms of interactivity, Amazon has that thing, which I'm blanking on the name of, but when you hit pause and it shows you the actors, anybody have the name of it?
It's called it starts with an X.
Yeah, and it's something they've been working on with the NFL and some sports
Amazon
leagues
X-ray, right?
Yeah,
X-ray. Yes, that's what it's called.
Yes.
Thank you. Right, thank you. Anyway, so that's a wonder. I hear people, friends of mine who don't work in TV, are always asking me about that, and they're saying it's such a wonderful feature, because they're like, yeah, that's exactly what I want. It shows you the actors and a little bit about the scene and all that. And that's something that other people, that anybody could sort of, with a FAST or anybody else could throw in, especially. And I love that idea about having, these weeks of John Wayne movies, or going back to older shows and having the cast comment on it. I mean, you can have the Friends reunion, and they've canceled that, but you could have them all on talking about the episodes from
this
home. Exactly. Well, the Brady Bunch would be perfect like this. Yes.
That's exactly the one.
It always seems strange to me that Netflix never took the the opportunity they had to create the ability for people who understand films to get on there and editorialize and include private watch parties, but they're doing that now. It's like they should have been doing that a long time ago. And Colin, you and I discussed that with Filmstruck. That would have been a perfect opportunity. And I remember a long time ago at the American Film Institute, Enhanced TV Lab, which was headed up by the great Nick DiMartino, who we all know. There was a project that came in from Turner, and it was for the Turner Classic Movies people. And TCM, I think, is in a great place right now to innovate. And the project, which was a prototype, allowed you to gamify their network. And it was never built, but what they did is that the more you watched, and I don't remember all the rules, but the more you watched the show and you played the game, the more you rose to become the mogul. And you could be the mogul of the whole network, like the expert on films, or watched the most films. I can't remember all the rules, but I think what do you guys think about that kind of innovation coming out of these?
I have no idea why television, why Netflix, why Hulu aren't investing in doing this. Look, we've had the technology. Remember 1 versus 100 on the Xbox, where you had you had people. It was a quiz show, but you had everybody was playing along and could answer questions remotely. And take on the people that were, quote, in the studio. Look, we're doing this. This technology makes it very, very easy now to switch the game show idea, I think, into the digital realm. I don't know why they aren't doing it. I'd love to see Hollywood show a little bit of creativity here and push the boundaries and start doing this sort of thing. Gosh, Jeopardy has been so compelling for so long. We can absolutely do Jeopardy without the people being in the studios. That's no problem.
Yeah, I advise a few startups in and around sort of this stuff, and from the funders' perspective, right, it tends to be this interactive TV thing has been around and back and forth, and you're talking to somebody who's sort of seen all these iterations over the last 20 years or so, right? And it's almost a dirty term, this interactive television thing. But, as before all of this sort of hit, right, the idea about sports and betting and the ability to layer in more interactively, more aggressive streams of data that could be consumer controlled, and frankly, even leading to the opportunity to place those bets in conjunction with latency assumed, though the actual programming of sports. Is absolutely something that a lot of people were baking into their business models, right? Yeah. I advise another startup that's kind of bringing back the idea of shoppable video, right, which is already a thing in Instagram and in Snapchat and in various online video and social video kinds of environments, right, where you kind of make it somewhat frictionless or free to actually not only engage with, but literally 1 button or 2 button push to actually commence some kind of sale. Now, here's the kicker, though, the problem or the issue, right? Putting all this into context and assuming some kind of at least midterm kind of correction or slowdown in the overall marketplace, there is this, I think, historical reversion to the mean that comes into television, right? Which is tends to be, I'm not saying it's not different this time, but regression, consolidation, culling, tamping down, and maybe only doing expenditures in things like broadcast or live linear television that arguably has been shape-shifted over the years for sure, but is still looked upon as a safer bet when you've got a lot fewer chips to play and spend, where it's a broader scale of reach, right? Versus these other things which sadly would be looked upon, interactive and technology and startups, and as nice to haves. And I've seen that time and time again. Look, I started and ran 2 ventures practices in the agency space, right? When times get tough, all that sort of bold, sort of futuristic and like we need to do this kind of stuff vision melts away really fast when it's all hands on deck and let's just hold on for the dear life, right? And it always seems to cyclically go back up when times get more flush again. Right? Again, I'm pointing out is that the irony is all these things you're talking about and that we've talked about make a ton of sense now and should, but aren't around now because I think it's going to stultify some of the things that actually should be invested in because people are trying to hold on.
Well, let me look back to something Alan said earlier, and he's absolutely right. The problem with next gen TV is that it's TV, it's broadcast TV. We've never done that very well in the US. It works very well in other places, but not here because of we're so spread out. But what's different this time is we've done a much better job in getting broadband to a wider range of places than we did with broadcast television. Broadband is viewed as a lifeline service now, and if it's not in most places, it will be at some point in the future. And the reason I'm saying that is because the big differentiator here is the existence of these fast services. And I hate to keep going back on that, But it is a huge differentiator. And Alan, I don't know if you've checked out Pluto TV recently, but you can see CNN, you can see Fox, you can see CBS News, you can see a whole bunch of those broadcast news channels. You do not need paid television anymore to do that. And when you turn your smart TV on, like my Samsung yesterday was keying me to go and watch those channels for free. And listen to this. I reached out to Pluto TV yesterday, Jeff Schultz, and I asked him, are they seeing an increase in viewership? You bet they are. He told me since the travel ban, we've seen a 74% lift in viewership across our news category. He said, in addition to the uptick in news consumption, we also witnessed double-digit lifts, 10% plus on our binge watch channels, entertainment and movie channels, kids programming and VOD alike. So you bet they're seeing a huge step function in the usage of their services.
Do you think, Alan, do you want to respond to that, or? Oh, we can't
hear you, Alan.
You got to turn. Where's your audio? Well, until he figures that out, I'll ask another question, which is, what about the idea that these companies are going to have to reach out to other new sources of content? There are a lot of other smaller entities out there that are delivering content on YouTube, that people have built up elaborate channel followings, thousands or hundreds, millions of subscribers. Do you think we're going to start to see people making deals with YouTube stars more and more and bringing those into these services you're suggesting? Or do you think we will see these services reaching out to an international audience and bringing in content from India or, France or, in foreign language? I mean, that seems a little more far-fetched for an American audience that doesn't speak a lot of, multiple languages. But what do you guys think? Where are they going to pluck this new content from? Or are they just?
I think.
Yeah, I mean,
I think that was already on. I think it's already on
CBS.
Yeah, I think that was already underway.
Yeah.
I think that was already underway. I mean, I'm not sure that current times sort of make that stronger or faster or whatever. But the idea of the YouTube star becoming kind of the talent bazaar, if you will, for more mainstream acquisition and or encapsulate, bringing it into the fold on a bigger platform. I don't know if this makes any real difference to that. I think it's probably going to have more people throwing content out there on the YouTube platform. But I don't know. I'm not that necessarily hastens things more quickly. But I think YouTube by itself becomes even more interesting as an entertainment vehicle, given more people at home. And frankly, I would make the argument, and Colin, you may know this better than I, younger audiences almost looking at YouTube more as a, if you will, television or entertainment destination anyway, relative to more traditional TV channels.
Yeah, that's totally true. And Tracy, I would say it's already happening. So we have companies like Zone TV and Whirl that are helping to bring new audiences in traditional television formats to YouTube content. So they're creating channels out of this content and distributing them through traditional pay TV and virtual pay TV operators as well. So already happening. That is going to happen a lot more, Tibbs, right on. When we're all locked in, we're going to see an explosion of content on YouTube. I think that's going to lead the way, maybe with entertainment.
Alan,
Alan, are you back with us? No, we still can't hear you.
You have to click on your audio says you're there. It has nothing to do with setting your computer. All right. Well, look at your computer settings.
No, it's not helping.
Well, I'll ask another question, which is, who do you think is going to make a lot of money out of the lockdown? I mean, is it going to be the addressable advertising community? Programmatic? Are the networks? I mean, which segment of the TV industry? And I don't know, what do you think of our new title for our show, Televisionation, right? This is State of the Nation discussion. Which segment of the television nation is going to win big? Is it going to be like Pluto or the news of the world? I mean, like, who's going to make a gigantic amount of money from this?
We already had the answer to some of that, and that is, of course,
Disney. Plus,
the fast service is Disney. That's going to get Disney in even more homes, I think. But I think this could be, by the way, I think this could be the key that unlocks.
Lost you, Colin. I lost you.
Just when it was getting good.
Tim,
Yeah.
I can hear you. Uh-oh.
Yeah, I don't know what I don't know what I was going to say, but I beyond that fast thing, which we'll come back to when he's back up. I think the reality is in the short term, I don't think anybody's winning right now. Okay, I honestly think that this is. I mean, you're seeing ads still playing out right now that have not been able to be pulled off the schedules. You're seeing a lot of DTC companies and their ads taking over that displacement. And I'm also concerned, frankly, that subscription services are not necessarily going to see a huge spike in subscriptions. People are, I'm not sure, going to be paying more for things right now when they're probably thinking about how to prevent doing that. The one last thing I'll throw in, and I think Colin's back, is advertising. The economic reality of advertising is that it is a lagging indicator, right? All the stuff that we've seen in the last couple of weeks on the stock market is arguably more of a leading indicator. And if you look at past downturns, for whatever reasons, when advertising comes into play, it tends to be a sort of a slow sort of denouement that is months behind, maybe a year behind, depending on reverberations. So I'm not sure marketers and ad spenders right now. Now, this is also uniquely different because there's a lot of inventory that's now evaporated, like sports. I think it's a really strong shot across the bow right now to the industry, especially the ad-supported one. I don't know how long that lasts, but I can tell you that shock won't reverberate in terms of the spending decisions for another couple of months, and that then will shake out the agency personnel space, how marketers are looking at their budgets, certainly the near-term ad expenditures and commitments. So we haven't heard the boom effect of what's happened these last couple of weeks until another couple of months. So that bears watching. Doesn't mean that FAST doesn't succeed or survive, but ad-dependent services of all kinds have to be prepared for that.
Who's going to make it? Who's going to monetize really big, Alan?
Well, I think that the fasts are going to do really well because I think a lot of people are going to be watching them. I also think that cable, the cable networks and broadcast networks have a real opportunity here now to start playing around with lower ad loads. That they've got a captive audience that they can go to advertisers and say, we probably have bigger numbers than you ever imagined. And what we're going to do is that thing that we've been talking about forever and cut our ad loads in half so that they're at the level of the FAST. And we're going to charge you more money for it because you're seeing more people. Or we're going to do it on certain shows and see how it plays out or whatever. But there's got to be some way, because they're going to commit suicide if they don't. They're really going to just put themselves out of business if they keep up with 16-minute ad loads at a time when everybody else is cutting it down to 5 to 8 minutes maximum an hour. And this is a great way to do it and to play with other, to play with addressable, to play with interactive, to play with other ad formats and say, look, everybody in America is at home and watching TV now. Let's just try this.
Yep.
Well, let's see. I'm going to say again, I'm fully expecting all kinds of new forms of innovation, new types of content to come out. For example, even though there's all of these stresses and challenges, I still think people are going to figure out new ways to communicate. I've heard of, there are yoga groups from Israel communicating across the globe. There are live meditation groups. I didn't do that. There are religious groups getting together. I've been seeing that floating by. Yesterday, I was the last day of a 3-day conference produced by Singularity University. I mean, people are really experimenting, and the communications and the content's happening from all over the globe. So I'm kind of curious. Do you guys remember Fahrenheit 451 when they had the interactive soap opera format?
Yeah.
She would act with people she saw on her screen. She would read the script, but everybody was distributed.
Yeah.
You know, but it'll be interesting to see how the TV industry is able to monetize, to innovate, to continue to produce what they're doing. I mean, to some extent, do you think that, and this is, I guess, my last question, but do you think the TV industry will be able to just manage the distribution of all this content remotely? I'm assuming they can. They won't have to be in a studio. Are you in touch with, like you said, Pluto? I mean, how did Jeff say that they're managing their business? Just, it's all distributed, right? They don't have to.
Yeah, but their business model is many of their channels are constructed channels from YouTube and from VOD assets. So they're virtual linear. They do have, of course, they have linear channels. So they have CBSN and CNN and all of those. And those actually still take a regular ad load. I'm guessing, actually, to be honest, I haven't sat and watched them for any length of time, so I don't know if they have a regular ad load. I think on the other channels, the ad load is actually slightly lower. The great thing that they offer, of course, is that they offer targeted advertising across all their channels, which I think is a very interesting model. So yeah, I think their business, I think, is well managed, and it's not dependent on a continual flow of premiumly produced scripted or unscripted material. They're relying on a different source for that type of content. So I think they're in a pretty good position to continue to move forward and to capitalize on the situation that we're in.
I think that's largely true. Again, I worry about I think to Alan's point, the idea of, I wouldn't even call it experimenting with lower ad loads. I think it's a complete rethink strategically about what ad loads look like going forward, because it's going to get, you think it's painful now, right? Seeing the same ads over and over again, and the ad load creeping up towards what it used to be or what it is in linear. It gets worse when there are lesser advertisers, and they're all all DTC advertisers, and when a lot of them, especially the DTC advertisers, are now tone deaf to what's the reality today, right? Because these products, I'm not getting a Casper mattress anytime soon in the next couple of months, even if I needed one, right? Because that's not my first priority right now, right? I'm not getting BarkBox for my dog, much as I love him, because I'm going to get some pet food from the pet store for a couple of months to hunker down with, right? So there's a tonality to advertising, and frankly, we haven't seen that play out yet because nobody's been able to pull their schedules yet, because this happened all so quickly. So it's the best of times, it's the worst of times for these fast folks, right? I think in terms of exposure, in terms of maybe sampling, in terms of all of that, but if they don't change the process of how they take on advertising, how the economics of that works, and frankly, the user experience, now that they've got a great opportunity to experiment accordingly, given all this sort of homebound viewing, it might be an opportunity lost if they don't sort of take advantage of that. So to Alan's point, great time to experiment. One
thing that was a big surprise to me. I was actually looking at this yesterday, and I jumped on and I looked at Pluto, Zumo, and Tubi. None of them had a coronavirus news channel. I would have led with that. Wouldn't you?
Yeah, I guess. You know what Pluto does have, is you're bringing up their latest interface, which I think is a huge game changer. They now have the ability to sort of click and change the channel, which is something that no OTT was able to do ever. In other words, if I'm watching the CNN feed on Pluto and a commercial comes on, or I want to see what a boring part of the show, I just click and I go up to the next channel. Now, one of the big things that OTT could always tout is like, well, people have to watch your commercials because it's just too painful for them to click out of them the way they do on traditional TV. But at the same time, it also makes discovery and serendipity a lot easier. So I think that's a huge improvement and innovation. That's what I was saying. A huge innovation that we're going to see spreading throughout the FAST and just overall OTT universe.
Hey, Tracy, can I ask one quick question before we run? of the
Yeah,
guys?
I mean, we've
And
reached
you?
our time, and you guys, I
Okay.
mean, I know we all love this industry so much, and there's so much more to observe. I'm sure we could do another whole hour, I guess, but let's just wrap it up. So maybe everybody make one comment, or we can be done. What would you like to go for it? You guys ask the question. Yeah,
I'll throw out something for consideration and maybe next conversation. I'm very interested in particular on what Roku looks like going forward, because even before all of this sort of hit, there was real consternation, depending on who you talk to, about how successful, how important, how integral the Roku platform and system is and was relative to the grander scheme of things. And it's a very interesting company that's sort of at the nexus of a lot of stuff, right? Original content, possibly, certainly their own channel of aggregated stuff, and frankly, an Uber enabler, if you will, to almost half of OTT audiences out there in the country, right? And so they and a bunch of other companies might be very interesting conversations for next chats, because they can either be galvanized by this and are the buy of all time when it comes to our little industry, or they could be crushed by it because of other things, because of the scale of, say, a Google and or an Amazon who might want to pounce and squeeze them out. Don't know, but I leave it for future conversation.
Anybody else want to make a final statement? I'm gonna go for it.
Sure. So I think I agree with Tim. Roku's a very interesting company to watch during this time. They've executed a pivot like I've never seen a company do before. It's pretty amazing that they pivoted away from hardware into an advertising model, and this is a great time, I think, to have done that. I think the level of conversation about the fast services indicates that we're all pretty bullish on how they can do in this time as well. So I think this is very exciting for them too. One of the things that we might want to talk about in our next conversation is what's going to happen to the movie industry. Obviously, big changes in the short term. I wonder if those changes are going to live beyond this crisis time, and maybe we'll see systemic change there too.
Yeah. And I will leave it with, I agree with Tim. I'm a big fan of Roku, and I'm also very interested in their main competitor, Amazon, because right now, everybody is on Amazon, probably, I would say, at least multiples of what they were beforehand, and that seems to continue to be the case. And Amazon can use every visit to buy, new bathroom supplies as an opportunity to promote their own programming and to promote IMDb TV, their own FAST, which they have not really promoted at all, but they certainly could and make it a real thing. And the last I had looked, they were allegedly going to make original content for that as well. So between that and everything that's on Amazon Prime, they could really make a push right now for free in a way that nobody else can. So I'm curious to see what they do over the next few months.
Well, thank you very much, gentlemen. There's so much more to think through, and I hope you will. I want to invite you back, obviously, to do more Televisionation shows. Feel free to invite on your friends and colleagues if you want to do that, or we can join each other again another time. We can discuss all that offline about the frequency. This is great that we're able to communicate out to our to the industry, right? To the TV industry, and we're excited to help drive any form of innovation or communication forward. So thanks very much, guys. I just want to remind everybody, Colin Dixon is the principal. What's your actual title? Principal of
Chief Analyst and Founder.
Chief Analyst and Founder of nScreenMedia. And next time I'll have all your graphics floating up, by the way, when I can get this more organized. And Alan is the
co-founder and lead analyst at TVRev.
TVRev.com. And Tim is the
founder and CEO of the Vertere Group, verteregroup.com.
And for anybody watching this, these are three of some of my most trusted colleagues and friends in the industry who lead our sessions at TVOT. So thank you so much for sharing your time and expertise.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. Take care.
Loved it.